We'll start with a question. And now I'm already starting very formally. I shouldn't. Okay, forget it. Let's start over. Have you read Meet Me in the Bathroom?
I have read it. Yeah,
You've read it.
Yes.
Did you read it back when it came out, or did
no,
you later?
I read it like a few years late after that. I think.
Okay.
So it was. I don't know. I think it was after the documentary came out. Even.
Okay.
Yeah.
So well after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because it came out in 2017, I think, and I remember reading it at the time, and I think it gave a lot of people like obviously a nostalgia for that particular like scene, but I also think it gave people a nostalgia for scenes in general.
Yeah.
Essentially, I think also the pandemic, I think it caused this deep desire for community and for the physicality of scenes.
Yeah.
And I think about it. I thought about that a lot actually during the pandemic. In fact, did you ever see a movie called Other Music? Did I ever?
I did. Yeah, we've talked about
Yes,
this. Yeah,
we've talked
Yeah.
about this. Right. I saw it during the pandemic, and I remember thinking about like how much I miss the city and how much I miss physical spaces and culture happening in physical spaces. Right.
Right.
People gathering, and in this case, Other Music was about, just for context, it was about a record store in NoHo somewhere. I've never been to that record store.
Nor have I. It was way before my time.
Yeah, and it would just never heard of it. It wasn't part of my like experience of New York. It just reminded me of how much I think a city like New York is so full of like these physical places and physical spaces.
At its best, anyway.
At its best, right. It could be also very isolating. I think that, for instance, Dime Square is an example of a scene that exists more online than it does physically. One could argue that it was created online.
Yeah.
But Dime Square is a scene that less artists emerged from the Dime Square scene than there were articles written about.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
It felt like more of an aesthetic signifier than any other thing to me. Like, I didn't get the sense that those people were all like, you know, if you can even identify many of those people, that they were all like hanging out and bouncing real ideas off of each other. It was just sort of it felt like a playground for a certain type of person to me, which is fine, but I wouldn't really, I think to your point, call it like a scene in quite the same way that,
Yeah.
or at least an art scene.
Whether you think the artists that came out of Dime Square are good or not, they were legitimate artists that came out. Just the number of artists that came out of that is just so small compared to just the amount of like people talking about it.
I mean, and maybe this is a lack of my own knowledge about this, but like, do you feel like there was a philosophical sort of through point for that whole deal? Because I think that's something that, as I think about what like a scene is and what it actually means, is like a really, really essential piece of it. It's not always like, in fact, I think the best ones don't have, at least at first, like a unique codified like aesthetic, or like a sound out of a music scene or whatever. Like those things come later,
Yes.
but they start with like a philosophical through line. And that was the thing that always felt like I wasn't quite catching what that was with the whole Dime Square thing. Do you feel like that existed, or?
No, so people have made this point. I'm not the only one who's making this point, but like I think it was the other way around, right? It was like some sort of it was created online and then it was kind of forced into existence in a way. Even though, again, there are people who were making art from that particular part of Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, but like the ideology, the aesthetic, like everything was kind of built in first in a weird way.
A reverse engineered
It wasn't
kinda
like
scene.
organic in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I maybe this is a little unfair. It feels like the problem there was that like you have this like massive media class in New York of people who are aware now of, especially coming out of things like Meet Me in the Bathroom and this sort of like general desire for physical spaces and, you know, longing for that kind of social dynamic, who know how to create, who know what it looks like. They know what a scene looks like,
Yeah.
but aren't really like you can't make a scene that way. You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah.
Like you can. I guess maybe you can. Maybe they did, but
Well, actually, so this is the thing. In defense of Times Square, one could also argue that similarly, like the early 2000s indie scene that was, chronicled on Meet Me in the Bathroom, that scene was also not created in the streets of Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, but in the magazines, in the pages of the magazines of Pitchfork, especially NME, which had a lot more influence at the time and championed the Strokes and a lot of the indie bands in New York. In a way, NME was kind of like what Substack was doing to
Sure.
Times Square.
and you have the early blog era,
Yeah.
too, with that whole thing. You know, like I think they get pretty deep into that in that book. Just the early sort of fan blog
Yeah, and
impact, breaking like
also-
the Killers and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the book itself also solidifies that scene. And I remember the book it's an oral history. It's like it kind of like reads like talking heads in a documentary. Like
Right.
you just kind of like listen.
This is
to
why that
different-
documentary sucks, kind of, is because
Yeah, you didn't like the documentary.
It's not. It's good archival footage, but the book is a better documentary than the documentary.
Totally. I was never a big fan of Interpol, but after watching the documentary, I'm like, they were kind of authentic.
Yeah.
Those guys.
Let me ask something. Because you were not here at that time, right? Well, the reason I ask is because I get the sense that, and I can admit that I'm probably biased here because I didn't come up in any New York art scene. I didn't when I was starting to play music, I was in Boston.
Yeah.
And it's a very different culture. It's a very smaller, scrappier, more DIY focused sort of place. But it always seemed to me like New York was more of a proving ground for like bands that had some kind of cachet already, or at least had some like nugget of broader appeal. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
So New York becomes like a testing ground for like see if you can make it.
Kind of. Not. I don't think intentionally, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, you see it with like, you think about like the no wave thing and like Sonic Youth coming out of that. Mm-hmm. Did anyone else come out of that? That like had lasting power,
Right.
Like people know who like Glenn is, but like nobody knows any of those other artists, and other than the Sonic Youth. And,
Yeah.
and I feel like that was because there wasn't like there wasn't like a need to create like a local like pocket of maybe like an art philosophy.
Yeah.
In that case, which is a thing that New York is maybe good at, is that sort of like more high art minded stuff, being connected to visual artists and galleries and that whole scene and the jazz of it all. But I don't know. It seems to me that like it kind of has to be different than any other place, and maybe like the early aughts thing feels like the last gasp of like the last real like codified New York scene, because it was the last time it was cheap to live here. That's like really the only thing
Maybe,
I can think of.
but I don't know if I buy that. Like, I think it's you said it. It's like the last codified one, but then, we're gonna look back and codify other scenes,
Sure.
and identify other scenes. I think time tells. I mean, the time will tell if there were other scenes. It's hard to know it when you're in it. You're not. I mean, I was going to ask you about Ridgewood because I know you've played a lot in Ridgewood. We have a lot of artists here. We have a lot of musicians and tons of venues. Right? We have TBI, cassette nowadays. Transpico's Stone Circle Theater.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, a lot
Which
of
is
cool stuff
great.
happening over there.
Yeah. The Windjammer, Bar Frida. I feel like I'm forgetting. Dada, which is a wine bar that focuses on jazz. So like we're very spoiled in Ridgewood. We have a lot of venues. Venues, by the way, key component to a physical scene, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the venue. You have to have the physical spaces, right?
I think the
so that you have a scene, right?
Yeah. I think the kind of physical space you have does matter a lot, though. Like, I think
Yeah.
what New York now or Ridgewood has now is a lot of good venues and bars to play music in, which is awesome. But it doesn't inherently like foster like and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, which is that like I think for it to be like a quote unquote scene, there needs to be some kind of philosophical through line. There needs to be like this is what like
Sure.
this is the exchange of ideas happening. It's not just there are a lot of good bands playing here, because you're never going to run out of places to play. You're
true.
never going to run out of people to reach potentially.
You're saying it's the philosophical through line that connects a scene
it's
and makes a scene.
because a scene has to have like players. You know what I mean? There are the people who go to the shows, and maybe they go to a lot of shows, and that's great. But like, there are always artists and like figureheads and like de facto like leaders of scenes, because you need that to sort of like
Yeah, you do.
you need that to sort of create the sort of the whirlwind of ideas and the bouncing.
define the philosophy, because that I think it happens organic. It has to happen organically. The philosophy or the ideology, if there is one, will happen afterwards. But I think that there's something. It has to happen. It has to come up organically.
Yeah, I don't.
So
Yeah,
I would say that. Sorry, but one
Sure.
more point about like, because going back to like the 70s, right? We talk about like CBGBs and Max's Kansas City or whatever. Part of what made New York so interesting at that time was that it was recovering from an insane financial crisis. The city was basically bankrupt, and the city's institutions had no money. Therefore, there was no regulations anywhere. Therefore, you could DIY venues were everywhere. You could play anywhere with no supervision. There was no like regulations on sound, on what you can do to a space, that who can you let in, that you can do. You can let minors in. You can do drugs. Because like you can use any space and turn it into a venue. There was a real sort of like excitement around that, but that happens because there was a real physical like phenomenon, which is this financial crisis that caused like a lot of like people to leave, a lot of artists to move in. It's cheap, it's dangerous. That's what sort of creates the environment for that particular scene. Then whether or not there's an ideology behind that, that's later. That comes later to then maybe defines.
Yeah,
it later.
maybe, but I think it's also maybe you define it later. But I think the through lines existed at the time. You know what I mean? Like, I think to your point, like, yes, this is like a city in distress. It's also the hangover of the 60s optimism, the sort of death of the hippie subculture dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's a real like I don't want to call it cynicism, because I think that's maybe a little unfair to the more joyful aspects of that, the like the 70s New York thing. But I do think they're like part of what groups that movement together is that sort of cultural reaction to not just it's there are no rules because we've been left to our own devices by the world essentially, but also because there's that sort of
but
hangover aspect.
Right, and that's but yeah, exactly. I think, and people are saying about like the early 2000s indie scene, it's like after 9/11 there was this sort of creative depression in Manhattan, and there were efforts to sort of revitalize New York. There were a lot of like street artists that came out of that. In fact, like Shepard Fairey and JR and all these street artists were now very famous. Like, I think Lower Manhattan was a place for them to reclaim that devastated place, and make it vibrant again. Also, the Tribeca Film Festival, was created in part to inject some money into that part of the city. Also, then Bloomberg's New York, which is all about development and defined by this developing and gentrification and injecting like corporate real money into the city. I think that creates a stage of where these bands are coming from now. There's bands are emerging in this particular New York. We know this now, in retrospect. I don't know if you could. If we talk about Ridgewood, I'm not sure what we can say about Ridgewood. We could talk about post-pandemic. Maybe there's going to be things to be said about as I said earlier, the craving of community, the craving of physical spaces, maybe. But who knows? I mean, it's hard to define things as they're happening.
Yeah, of course. I think it's easier to see when you're looking at smaller places. You know what I mean? There are scenes that are active now, that are cresting now, that feel like you can look at them and say, yeah, that's a scene. And maybe some of it is spin, maybe some of it is marketing, but there are in Chicago, there's and the sort of that Midwest, corridor, you have the Hallow Gallow thing, and with Kai Slater and Sharp Pins, and now Good Flying Birds out of Indianapolis, and this very Gen Z kind of youth oriented scene that's not a lot of people. Chicago's a big place, but this is we're talking really about probably 10-ish bands, and most of them all play in the same bands. And it's easy to look at that, and even though none of those bands sound really anything like each other, to hear or to see the through lines about a reaction to, I think, yes, they're coming up in a post-pandemic world. They don't have a lot of physical, especially that age, where you probably went through college or maybe even earlier during COVID. You're craving an actual authentic physical experience.
Totally.
Making art. And so it makes sense that they would all sort of find each other and, start making zines and start playing in bands and putting out each other's records.
Totally.
And playing on each other's records. So you can see that, but in Ridgewood it's really hard because Ridgewood is just one neighborhood in New York, but New York is a very big place.
Yes, it's true. I mean,
it's not that cheap to live in. As I think that matters. I don't think it means there's no scene. But I do think it
for sure. It's a difficult place to live, and that's sort of one thing that I think a lot of these artists have in common is that the more expensive a city is, I think the less the harder it is for real scenes to emerge, real creative, interesting scenes to emerge. I wonder what happens in other cities, though. I wonder if Austin is becoming another city that's very expensive, but Austin was very known for a vibrant cultural scene. I actually just recently I watched this documentary on Athens because you
Oh, did you watch the Elephant Six one or the Athens?
I watched one that was In and Out.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I didn't realize this. I remember REM and I didn't realize that the B-52s are from Athens.
Yeah, I mean they're this sort of originating Athens.
Yeah, they were the ones who kind of
yeah.
But it was interesting and great documentary. It reminded me of. Did you ever see The Decline of Western Civilization?
I actually haven't. That's the hardcore one.
There are 3. You should watch the 3. I watched 2. I don't even know what the third one is. And it reminded me of this In and Out documentary. In Out? What's it called?
It's Athens in/out or something.
In/out, Athens, Georgia. Yeah. Yeah, really interesting.
And that one, I think that one notably is it came out years later. That wasn't a timely, at least I don't think so, a timely record of that scene. At that point,
No, it came out in the mid '80s.
Right, but like a lot of those bands were coming out of like I guess REM is in the mid '80s, probably still at the height of its powers, but like they're breaking in their early '80s. Like Pylon was like late '70s.
Right, because I was watching this documentary. I was like, wait, the B-50. In my mind, B-52s are way earlier than REM. REM for me, I associate them with in the '90s. I don't associate them. I know they started in the '80s, but
Well, I think that what's interesting about Athens is that it's a much smaller place. It's a much quieter art world. Like it's very insulated. It's not the kind of place where you get a lot of people come. Like the only people who really go there who aren't already like sort of embedded in the American South are who maybe went to the University of Georgia down there, are people who only became aware of the music scene later and were chasing it a little bit. But for the most part, like it was more or less untouched for a really long time, still kind of is. And so I think that you can stretch musical lineages a lot longer when the people who are there are basically there. They're committing to lives there.
Right.
Whereas a lot of
in New York, it's like more.
Well, it's all
it's everything.
Big American cities are like this. It's so you get so much turnover.
Much turnover. Yeah.
Cultural generations are just way faster and shorter.
Right. That's interesting. It takes time to cultivate. Like in a city like Athens, Georgia, it's just like you have like
space to breathe,
room
to grow. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I don't know. In that documentary, I think there's one band that had moved there to be in the documentary and only lived there for like 3 months.
And stayed for 22 years.
No. They stayed for like 3 months and then they left. And it was like as far as I've read, it was like kind of a big deal in Athens because they felt a little bit like these Johnny-come-latelys come down. The director liked them.
The South is interesting because it's like, arguably where American culture begins. I think the South, for me at least, it's like it's a place where it lives in my imagination only. I don't even know. I've never been.
You've never been anywhere in the South?
I've never been anywhere in the South.
Below the Mason-Dixon. Wow.
Well, I've been to Florida.
Okay, but that kind of doesn't count. Like if you're in Miami, it doesn't count.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like I never really actually seen the American South. And I feel like if I want to understand this country, really understand this country and the richness of this country, I need to see the South.
At least partly, yeah. I'm the exact wrong person to speak on it because I'm
from Boston.
I'm from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I'm like terminally East Coast and my sensibilities. But I think there's an openness to the South. There's a spookiness. There's like a there's that like sense of like the ghosts of the past live really in parts of the South live really strong. And I think there's also the aspect of like, because at least for the last half a century or whatever, the dominant culture in the South has been so conservative. The art scenes are very reactive to that in a way that I think can be really good because they're not coddled. They're not in a way that like in New York you can do anything.
Right. In the South you can't do anything, so that's why when you
do
have
something
like
crazy.
Yeah, exactly. When you have art, but also like you have an amazing history of that in the South where you have all these genres of music kind of like emerging, maybe not because of that conservative religious mindset, but maybe in despite of it, kind of like almost in defiance of it. That's why I think it's really interesting. I've never been. I want to go. As a music lover, I should go. I should see New Orleans. I should see Nashville and Memphis. I should see like these cities where birthplaces of American music.
Yeah, and Asheville, North Carolina has a really thriving
Nashville still, right?
Asheville.
Oh, Asheville,
in North Carolina.
Asheville.
is like really, that's where like Wednesday and MJ Lenderman and all that kind of cut their teeth down there.
Yeah.
But it's like a really thriving thing happening there, and again, I think it's a scene that really like place matters to it in a way that I think is important to the way that these things develop. It's the kind of thing that could only happen there.
Yeah.
And I think that's to get back to the New York of it all. Like, I think that's when New York, music scenes at least thrive, is when it's something that could only happen here.
Interesting.
And I think that's the case pretty much, not everywhere, but pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Where it feels really indebted to place.
Oh, yeah, that's really, so it's something that, when something really stands out here, it's something that you're like, only in New York you could do this. Which is rare, because like you could do anything in New York, as you mentioned. Like, it's very rare to see something that really stands out, because we're so spoiled. There's such an abundance of bands and artists here. It's like too much. Sometimes when they pop out, it's like, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know Kevin Morby?
Oh yeah.
His latest album is so good. I recently read an article about he went back to live in Kansas City. I'm not even sure he's from there. He just lives in Kansas City with his partner, who's Waxahachie, actually. Katie something.
Crutchfield. Yeah.
The album's called Little Wide Open, and it's so good. And it's kind of like, it has some references to the space that he's in, even though he recorded it in upstate New York. But the lyrics, like, he's talking about tornado sirens or whatever. It's really beautiful. And it's amazing that, these two musicians, Waxahachie and Kevin Morby, just decides to live in Kansas City. Not like in LA, not New York, not like these, where the recording music industry is basically based in. It's done. They just like live in.
I think it's smart.
Small.
Especially if you're doing Americana.
Yeah.
Which is like obviously very in vogue right now to have like a steel guitar in your record and do that whole thing. I think it's smart to go and live in a place where that's part of the thread of where you are, because you can make it's American music. At the end of the day, it doesn't belong inherently to a state or a region, but it does feel sometimes a little disingenuous when some like Brooklyn, like some Bushwick band
is doing like
wheels out the steel guitar and they have like,
I don't know
their
about
Western
that.
shirts on. Sometimes it feels a little a little put on sometimes.
I like to think that New York is like a place where you could do pretty country. You can do anything that's not necessarily, maybe not from New York, but like, what is from New York? Like, everything is like, that's the thing. It's like, it's hard to even pinpoint what's something that, what is authentic what is the authentic New York?
Well, I think noise is, and like the sort of industrial aspects of New York, like going back to the tornado sirens that you referenced in the Kevin Morby record. It's like the sounds of the place.
Sure.
Like the natural, quote unquote, natural sounds of the place are part of it, which is what, like, I mean, the whole, like,
Detroit techno.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, there's something so industrial about it. And like, it's why no wave happens in New York.
Right.
It's because the clanging and the droning and the noise of it all, the consistent, unrelenting noise of being in New York becomes part of the music of it. And I think when it does that, that's the best. That's the most authentic expression of, if that's what you're trying to do anyway.
Remember Our Wicked Lady?
Oh yeah, the rooftop place. Yeah.
That was such a good venue. They did some weird they had some really interesting experimental shows there. It's a shame that they closed. I thought that was a very good venue. That was like a big loss.
Yeah, the location was rough.
That area, and this is a different topic, but in off Morgan, that industrial part of Bushwick where like Roberta's is. And that place, when I was in college, there was a lot going on there. I remember there were like a lot of friends lived there, and I would go there all the time. There would be like parties, loft parties. There was such an excitement around that neighborhood, and it kind of like, if you go around that area, there's like, it almost seems like abandoned.
Yeah, people just left. They didn't like knock it down and put high rises up. People just
no, but that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh my god, here we go. It's like there's such a vibrancy now. There's going to be development. There's going to be gentrification. Roberta's is here. I remember even when I was looking for apartments at the time, I was looking at listings, and the listings would say only 2 stops away from Roberta's. I mean, it was such a, Roberta's was such a phenomenon. But that whole, and then syndicated open, I remember being like, okay, here we go. Here's the gentrification. Here we come. And then it stopped. Do you know that area at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I definitely missed the sort of prime Bushwick
era. You were in Boston.
I was in Boston at the time, but I don't know. Like, and again, like I'm only speaking to this as like an outsider, but I think the loft culture was pretty, like, obviously, essential to what the New York scene was at the time. I think it probably comes from the whole like salon thing of the mid-century. You know what I mean? Like that's how like even in the 50s,
like hosting something at your home and making your home become the exhibition space.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like art patrons, people who had the space, who loved art enough to bring it into their homes and invite people into their homes. The salon culture, I mean, that's how, like, that's the only reason we even have those like Connie Converse recordings from the 50s.
Yeah.
It's because they were just recording that stuff in somebody's house for fun.
Salon culture. I mean, I'm thinking now, God, I'm thinking of my friend Mike Flanagan, also from Massachusetts, and he would host like shows even at his loft.
That's like so.
It's very New York because it's kind of like you just doing it yourself, and you're just kind of like, you have this space. I'm just gonna put on a show and put in a party.
And the kind of architecture of that matters. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason in New York that it was lofts. It's because lofts were the places that were far enough away from like truly residential places. They had the space. And it was sort of a more, the people who were living in them were generally living somewhat more bohemian lifestyles and wanted that sort of thing in there. In Boston, we don't have lofts. So there never were like loft parties in any meaningful way. You have basements. Everybody has a basement. And
basement, right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you had and it's a college town. So it's very, the leases turn over really fast.
Sure.
You have some punk houses that have been there for, generations, but it's always like new people running it, every couple of years. But it was a basement show culture. I spent my entire college years every single weekend in like standing next to the laundry machine,
right,
watching bands play. And that was, but like, I say that because that affects, I think, in a lot of cases, the music you get. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, because you're in a basement, it feels, they were party-like, but it doesn't feel as much like a party. It feels more, because it's not a fun place to be, really, unless you're really drunk. So it's very band-focused. It's very much about, shows, at least in my time, were about seeing the bands and watching them play. And then you'd go out and you'd smoke in the yard, and then that was the social part of it. But also because the sound of the bands at the time, again, very, very clanging, very like noisy, garagey, kind of dusty sounding bands. That
perfectly in
that would cut in that kind of room.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
And so I think that you like in talking about Athens, you look at all these beautiful old houses where they're playing music, the way this the sound goes in the room factors into the kind of music you're making. It's a lot more expensive.
Right, a big southern kind of like colonial style homes being the also it reminds now I'm thinking of like London, the dance hall like from the Caribbean diaspora, the Jamaican,
The first wave ska kind of stuff.
yeah,
and-
that
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of that was happening a lot, and like the sound system as like a physical like in your house like you it was a DIY element of building a sound system that was like good enough for your party or whatever.
Totally,
And it was
yeah.
like the people gathering around these sound systems in the same way that people are gathering in basements or in lofts in New York or in, you know,
And the equipment and the availability of stuff
Yeah.
is usually like, it's so interesting how that factors into
Totally.
the music that's made. I mean, like you talk about like dub, and you know in Jamaica, and it's these old, you know, tape reverb kind of machines that are by any other like metric totally out of date.
yes.
But like it's what's available, and then
And what creates that sound.
exactly,
Yeah.
and then that sound gets replicated,
Right.
You know,
And then it
or
can-
like these old Casio keyboards that are really cheap but
Right.
like available,
Right.
And then all these things get then co-opted and you know
Yes.
resold to you, and you know usually American.
Yeah, it's
Music.
it's the constraints that make a scene interesting, right?
I think so.
How do you like find art, broadly speaking, that you
That's a great question.
now music? Film?
How do I find it?
Yes.
I rely a lot on social media, but also word of mouth too. I have a few friends, and you're one of them, that if you send me a band recommendation, I will listen to. My friend
Thank you.
Dan is one of them. Tom as well. There's just a few people in my life who if you send me a link to a band, I will listen to it. I don't do this. There's plenty of friends who would like send me, hey, check out this band. I'm like, okay, thanks. No, yeah, but I will listen to if you send me an album or something. Hey, let's check this band out. I will do so.
Yeah, and thank you, and I definitely have those trusted sort of sources as well, and like you're definitely one of them, and my brother's a big one. He's like a real fountain of knowledge about this stuff. But I think for me, what I've found lately is that social media is not really cutting it in terms of like getting me to stuff that I actually find interesting, because it's so gamified in a way that's like it really, you don't get any sense of place from it. You don't get any sense of like the history of a group and whether they're really like actively doing anything. You know what I mean? Like it can be so like well produced, and it can be so the songs can be good, but like it's people who are creating music for the internet. They're not making music in the context of like a movement that's happening.
Sure.
And
well,
so
sure. There's two different things here, though. I think, and I want to push back on this
Sure.
because there's music that is very algorithmic friendly that gets pushed. That's for sure. And it's kind of sad to see what gets rewarded and what doesn't. Sometimes I'm like, why is this person not like, more well known? And because they're not really good at using social media, maybe because their music is not like whatever. But that's a separate thing. Versus, I think I find a lot. I find a lot of things that are happening. Shows that get announced, venues that appear, and even like certain music that I would have not known unless something pops up. Like the most latest example was earlier this year. There's this Spanish artist named Guitarrica de la Fuente, all spelled all in one word. Ooh. Stylistically, even though there's like 3-4 different words there, but there's like one word. He's like a singer-songwriter from Spain, and he had a Tiny Desk concert in February, and I was like, I was like surfaced on my feed, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool, and I clicked on him, and I looked him up, and I started getting into him. And then realized I had missed a show that he played in New York at Bowery Ballroom, which I was like, this is random Spanish singer-songwriter I never heard of. And, I try to keep track of what's
happening.
Emerging in Spain and US. But I was like shocked that I had never heard of him. and he's on a tiny desk. I was like, what the like I was like kind of like, did I just miss this? How did I miss this? And now I'm like, I can't, I'm like, I'm not gonna miss him again. If he ever comes back to New York, I'm gonna see him.
Well, I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that your algorithm got you there.
Yeah, it did. Got me
albeit
there.
Maybe a little bit late. I do think though.
Right, it's true. Well, I guess to your point, it could have gotten to me earlier. I guess
I do think that is a wonky aspect of how like social media works. Is that like virality matters more than timeliness.
Yes.
Like just because somebody somebody posted something a moment ago doesn't mean it's going to be surfaced. Like the newness isn't valued the same way as something that is like a proven, like algorithmically successful thing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you find out about a show, and this is a frustration for me, you find out about a show after it's already happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I only finding out about this now?
Yeah.
And so things like that frustrate me about the way
media.
that the Instagram of it all and
sure.
you know, all that stuff works. A thing I've been trying to do more is, I mean, obviously like all the old, for the most part, all the old institutions of like cultural knowledge passing on are still more or less present. Like you can still go to a record store and talk to a clerk, and there's a pretty good chance they're keyed in enough to what's happening where they can turn you on to something that's new to you, at least. And so I try to do that regularly. I try to go to record stores and talk to the people who are working there, and not to go in to say, oh, I want this record, I need to find this record, but to say, hey, what are you liking lately? What is interesting to you? What just came in? What is playing right now? And like, you know, that sort of thing. And I've found that that's really like a really valuable way to do it. Zines are
back, right?
If they ever went away, they are. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of really good zines. I mean, even in New York, there's My Little Underground that I really like.
You rely on zines though? You don't
Not rely, but it's a tool to help you whittle down the massive amounts of information, noise of the internet, into something that's like potentially palatable. Like I do think, and this is kind of goes into the scene conversation, like I think cultural, not arbiters, people get this sense that like the internet is like this great democratization of art where like now we can all have a say in what's good, which is like a great idea, but usually just creates a lowest common denominator in a broad sense. But so you really do still need people who are like really keyed in, really interested in not just what's new and happening, but like the history of all this stuff, and are like freaks about like going to like so many shows and seeing so many bands.
Absolutely. I mean, I respect, you know, publications like Brooklyn Vegan,
but even a lot of the big blogs.
There's not that many actually. I was thinking of, because Pitchfork is obviously not what it used to be.
I to be honest, I don't think Brooklyn Vegan is either. Don't come after me, Brooklyn Vegan. But you know, a lot of these.
Well, they list a lot of shows. They cover a lot of stuff.
They do cover a lot of stuff, but I think a part of the problem is that at some point in the late aughts, 2010s, all of those publications became vehicles for like PR, essentially.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And so people like,
you talking about like critics, right? You're talking
not even about critics, like I'm just speaking as a musician.
Sure.
You can spend all this time and energy getting you know, your new single written up about in Brooklyn Vegan or Stereo Gum or whatever it is, and you might, if you really get lucky and fight for it, get that listing, and you will post that listing, and you might even get some likes and reposts on that listing because people say, wow, your band is on that real thing. That's so cool. I've now in my mind created a little note on this that your band is cool, which is maybe valuable to some people, but 99% of the time nobody reads them.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think,
and then all their clicks and their ad revenue comes from when they write about, you know,
Yeah, I do think
some big
that
artist.
This is a totally different conversation. But
Yeah.
we do need, I think, cultural institutions, publications that have this institutional like weight to them that are kind of arbiters of culture. I do miss that. I know that it's not democratic, but I do kind of want. That's why I value critics, good critics, because now I fucking like everyone's a fucking critic. Like I value like in film. I can talk about the film from the film side. Film Comment used to be such an important magazine for me and for a lot of like film people. I wasn't around Kim's Video, but like Kim's Video is another institution that was important. And not Kim's Video wasn't an arbiter of taste or anything like that, but Film Comment was. Film Comment reviewed and had really good writing. Screen Slate, the website lists all the repertory screenings, and like they kind of, there's some curational aspect to it. I don't know. I miss some sort of something that tells you this is actually very good. Check this out. Like in an authoritarian kind of like, trust me, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not a. I think people really bristle at the numerical aspects of the ranking of art, but I do think there's still a massive value.
Absolutely.
In you go to a bookstore, it is not unusual to have a few shelves that are like staff recommendations,
staff picks,
and people will look at the staff picks, and people at record stores will look at the staff picks, and I'm sure that way at Kim's.
Exactly. Kim's had that,
and
right?
people need to have some level of trust in the expertise and the taste, because taste. And this is an aspect of the great democratization of art and whatever and social media, is that like the fandom of it all has made like taste kind of a naughty word. Yeah. The notion of like, oh, there are things that are like, nobody wants to say like, oh, there's stuff that's good and there's stuff that's bad, which is fine. Art is objective or subjective rather. Mm-hmm. But like, at some point you have to say, okay, what are my parameters for good taste and bad taste? Yeah. And if you can find people who you align with in that way, it's a really great way of experiencing like an art world that is way too massive to experience on your own.
Well, thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Let's turn on the AC now.
Myrtle vs. Wyckoff is hosted by Alejandro Veciana. Music by Tom Criblay, who records as TC. And I'm your producer, Marissa Keeley Brown. Until next time.
I'm pretty proud of my algorithm.
Oh my god, we canceled for that.
I build it slowly by engaging in just the right amount of horrible things.